America's Cannabis Conversation. Heard every Saturday at 4:20 p.m. online at americascannabisconversation.com. Time now for the lowdown on another high time experience. Here's 420 lifestyle correspondent Rich Walkoff.
Well, here on the W420 Radio Network, we're at the Harvest Ball in Santa Rosa, California, a couple of hours south of the proverbial epicenter of the greatest weed in the world, in the Emerald Triangle. And we're here with Maria Luisa Cesar, the California Department of Cannabis Control Deputy Director of Public Affairs. It's a rainy day, but you got a smile on your face because things are getting better for growers and cultivators in California. And tell me why.
That's right. This is a really fantastic event. We are really excited to be here and to support it this year with having a presence. We have a booth today. We're interacting with folks. We're answering questions about our newly adopted consolidated regulations. Tomorrow we have staff that'll be participating in a public panel about how folks can work with us and some of the resources that we provide for legacy growers and farmers. So really excited to be here, really excited to support today's event.
Well, tell me how things have streamlined bureaucratically and why things are better today for growers in California, legal growers who are fighting an uphill battle in so many respects.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So we just adopted our consolidated regulations, and that incorporates significant feedback from our licensees. It helps to streamline the process. It removes unnecessary burdens, cumbersome paperwork. We've really worked to ensure that barriers to entry, the ones that we have control of, are reduced where possible, and really listening to some of the feedback that we've received. We were really happy to see in the governor's budget this year the elimination of the cultivation tax and some needed tax relief that we knew our licensees had been looking for.
So the people have spoken and the state listened and they're responding. But it's still, as I said, kind of an uphill battle for many growers because of taxes being still high, even with reduction of the cultivation tax or the elimination. And diversity, equity, and inclusion still remain issues. So how do you view the progress as being formidable, or is it's a slow walk?
Both, I think, right? I think we need to take a moment to feel, real pride about the progress that we've made and the work that we've done in partnership with not just our licensees, but other stakeholders, public health officials, local jurisdictions. There are a lot of different voices that we're really in charge of listening to and crafting policies and regulations that really reflect those voices, and then also create a equitable, sustainable, regulated market here in California. That said, I still think there is a lot of work to do. And we've just reconstituted our Cannabis Advisory Committee. This is a committee that meets publicly. These meetings are virtual, they're open to the public, and they really are going to be looking at priorities for 2023 and soliciting input and feedback from licensees. So if there's questions, complaints, feedback about what you want to see in future iterations of these regulations, this is the place to make your voice heard.
What do you think is the most contentious issue that growers are facing, or the most daunting?
We've heard from our licensees that there are several pain points. We know that more work needs to be done as it relates to regulations and taxes and continued barriers to entry, both at the local level and at the state level. And we'll continue to listen to folks and incorporate their feedback to ensure that licensing, applications are getting processed and doing what we can.
Yeah. How does California's regulation of the industry compare to, say, Colorado, which had the jump on us, if you will, in terms of legalizing recreational cannabis?
I think California is unique just by the nature, the sheer size of our state and our economy. We're one of the largest economies in the world. And I think that presents some really unique opportunities and also some really unique challenges. I think we have talked with our partner agencies to get a sense of what's working, what's not working. California is also, significant in the fact that we represent production in terms of the amount of cannabis that is produced in our state.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking probably billions of dollars, right? And so much of it remains black market, gray market, or worse. So what measures are being engendered to help the legal grower fight that good fight?
So one of the things that was announced this summer was the creation of a unified cannabis enforcement task force. This is a task force that was created by Governor Newsom. It includes both the Department of Cannabis Control and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and about 24 other local, state, and federal agencies working on cannabis enforcement issues. So really tackling the illicit, the illegal market, transnational criminal organizations, so that we can eliminate the unfair competition that our licensed farmers are really having to grapple with.
Sure, and unfortunately, much of the illegal black market weed has got pesticides and chemicals and a lot of toxins that are not allowed, obviously, in legal weed. But then you have the issue of labs not being as, how should I say this, that haven't worked as effectively as we would have hoped, because a lot of labs have been coming under scrutiny for how they're testing even the legal weed and not catching as much of the illegal toxins that may be in the product. Are you familiar with that at all?
We're familiar with that issue, and we're certainly taking, action and ensuring that our licensed laboratories are complying with the regulations. We took an action not long ago against a laboratory, and we'll continue to do our part in overseeing that part of the market.
Do you have the resources to kind of play sheriff, if you will, over the labs and the illegal grows? Is the funding there? Is the manpower there?
The funding is there and the manpower is there. I think it's also important to underscore the scope of the challenge that we're facing and the fact that this is still a fairly newly regulated product, and it's going to take time.
Do you sense more of a bipartisan political approach to reconciling some of these issues? Because heretofore, some conservative organizations were anti-marijuana, and it was the progressives against the right-wing political agenda. Do you sense more of a bipartisan approach to the issues at hand?
Our focus is really on ensuring that we have a good regulated cannabis market here in California. Whether that support is coming from the right or the left, we're pretty agnostic about that. I think as long as we're getting the support that we need for the work that needs to get done.
What are some of the exciting things you're looking forward to in 2023 with California's Department of Cannabis Control here at the Harvest Ball on the W420 radio network? Today on a rainy day in Santa Rosa, California, just a little bit north of San Francisco, a little south of the Emerald Triangle, where some of the best weed in the world is grown for decades.
We're excited about continuing to do our work. We're excited about continuing to connect with and hear from our licensees. We're excited to continue amplifying I think the very important concerns and challenges that they're facing, and working with them and working with our local jurisdictions and our other stakeholders to find solutions so that we can continue to be truly a national and international model for regulated cannabis.
So many cities have prohibited dispensaries or the sale of delivery services and the like. How do you view that from the state perspective on cannabis control? And is it likely to get more stringent in communities saying no to cannabis, or is there a loosening of those feelings and movement?
So one of the things I want to point to is a grant program. So this is a grant program intended to help local jurisdictions expand access to cannabis businesses. We really want to work with our local partners to ensure that they have the technical assistance and the resources to prioritize access to regulated cannabis, because what's happening in communities that don't allow access is folks are still getting cannabis. It's just not regulated. And as you mentioned earlier, unregulated illegal cannabis can contain harmful pesticides, can be dangerous to public health, and we certainly have significant concerns about that. But we're looking forward to working with local jurisdictions to ensure that, again, they have funding and technical assistance to support them.
What are you most excited about looking ahead in your role here in California's cannabis control for 2023 on the horizon?
I'm really excited about really growing our presence in the community. We just hired a chief engagement officer who is going to be hosting open office hours, who has been making it out to public engagements to ensure that we're accessible, to ensure that we're taking in feedback and input. We also next year will be launching a consumer awareness campaign to help promote the legal regulated market and the importance of buying your product from licensed cannabis businesses, the dangers of the illicit market and illicit product. So I'm really excited about our opportunities to continue engaging the community and listening and taking that feedback and improving our work.
All right, cannabis fans, the state of California is not your enemy. They're your ally. They're your friend. They want to make it cleaner, better, safer. Maria Luisa Cesar, the California Department of Cannabis Control Deputy Director of Public Affairs. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a delight to meet you, and best of luck.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the questions.
This is Rich Walkoff on America's Cannabis Conversation.
Well, we all love that big yellow ball in the sky. The sun is the source of all our living things. But when winter comes, or the clouds come, or night comes, indoor farms turn to artificial light to make their crops grow. And what lighting works best? How do we maximize crop growth? Well, let's say hello to an expert. Joe Sullivan from Franklin Energy. He is the Indoor Agricultural Program Manager, talking about the advantages and the rebate opportunity for those who have a system that may be a little outdated or not as technologically advanced. So speak a little bit more about that, if you would.
On behalf of Excel Energy, Franklin Energy, implements their Indoor Ag Business Energy Assessment Program that has access to Excel Energy's full suite of energy efficient rebates that are available to growers and other commercial customers. So at the moment, Excel Energy is providing 70 cents per watt installed as a rebate. So for the purchase of horticultural LEDs, Excel Energy will actually pay their growers to install them. Fantastic. As I said, Franklin Energy does work all over the country for a number of utilities, and there is, at least to my knowledge, no other utility that has as a track rebate for their growers. So right now, if you were to buy, let's just say a 700 watt LED, you would receive almost $500, so $490 for the purchase of those lights, at least per light, that is. So it's a tremendous financial advantage to buy down the cost of horticultural LEDs, because we all know that they can be expensive. So it really brings down growers' ROIs to enable them to try out the technology and implement it permanently.
That's awesome. I mean, if you can increase yield, optimize your light spectrum so you save money on the energy, you emit less heat, so that reduces cooling energy costs. You control the UV amounts, so reducing the stress in the plants, fewer pests, less fungus and the like. I mean, this is the no-brainer of all time. I mean, I'm learning so much, and I'm sure our listeners are too. So if I have an indoor grow and I want to make a transition to LEDs and I want to get that Franklin Energy rebate, tell us what we've got to do.
Our rebates are actually paid for. They're paid to growers through Excel Energy. And you can go to excelenergy.com. That's XCEL energy.com to the lighting efficiency section to take a look at the application there. What we do is really help growers from the start to the end. We'll help you identify where that application's at. We'll help you fill it out, maybe help you select some lights and whatever you want your layout to be. You can contact the Excel Indoor Ag program at excelenergy.com. That's XCEL energy.com. And then from there, you navigate up top to business customers and then select rebates from the drop down. And finally, you can select business lighting from there. But the better way to get information fast and to participate in any of our programs would be just contact me directly, either by email or phone. My email address is jsullivan@franklinenergy.com. My telephone number is 720-822-3719. One of our amazing cultivation energy advisors will help you get started along your journey to be more efficient.
That's awesome, and we will link that on our site as well, W420 Radio Network. Joe Sullivan, how illuminating this conversation has been. You've shed the light, put a bright light on a dark corner of my mind about indoor grows and LED benefits and the rebates and the like. And that's Joe Sullivan from Franklin Energy, the Indoor Agricultural Program Manager. He's a Jedi. Thanks so much, Joe. This is Rich Walkoff on America's Cannabis Conversation.
It's time for Women in Cannabis on America's Cannabis Conversation, part of the W420 Radio Network.
Didn't you get the memo?
Here's Chase Roberts.
This is Chase Roberts, Women in Cannabis correspondent for the W420 Radio Network. It is a pleasure to introduce Nancy Birnbaum, founding publisher of Sensi NorCal. She is the cannabis industry connector. Nancy, welcome. Thanks for being here. How are you?
Hi, Chase. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you here. I wanted to ask you, how long have you been in the cannabis space?
Wow, I think I'm going on 6 years now. It's
that's a long time.
Yeah, it's not compared to some folks that I'm in my community. It's not that long, but it's been a really great 6 years.
Did you grow up in California?
Originally, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland,
Oh.
and I left for California as soon as I could when I graduated high school.
It makes sense. I think a lot of people did. I like to say they call it the Golden State for a reason. Did you ever envision when you were younger that you would be in this space?
No, not actually. I had spent the summer before my senior year of high school in San Francisco with my cousins and taking care of their kids, and for the summer taking them all around the city and doing things with them, kind of as almost like a, nanny. And I literally left my heart in San Francisco and I had to move there.
So easy to do.
Right.
And I wanted you to tell our listeners about your company, Sensi NorCal. What is it exactly? It's an entity. I know it's one of the leading sources for news in the cannabis space. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, it's a little different than that. So Sensi Magazine is one of the leading publications in the cannabis space, and Sensi Media was started by our founder Ron Cole back in 2017 in Denver, and has grown since then to be before COVID, we actually had 17 print publications around the country. I started the first or published the first Bay Area edition of Sensi just before COVID. In November of 2019. So I launched the first one in the Bay Area. It was called the North Bay edition of Sensi because we were kind of on a track to have a San Francisco edition and a Silicon Valley edition. And then I had 5 issues out before COVID hit, and it kind of stopped us in our tracks for a while. I call it our pandemic pause.
Oh, I like that.
We couldn't deliver our magazines anywhere. We couldn't do our famous events that we're so well known for. And so we had to focus on a more digital distribution and really being able to increase our reach, which I think we did really well over that COVID pause. In fact, we became the #1 read magazine publication online at that point.
Congratulations. That's really
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great effort on everybody's part, but it was between November of 2020 and July of last year that we kind of overtook everybody, including High Times, which was great. A young magazine.
Isn't High Times has been around since the 70s.
Right. It's one of the oldest publications in the space for sure. So Sensi is more of a city magazine type of, with a focus on arts and culture and health and wellness, and all plant medicine, not just cannabis. And, it really is a different from all the other publications out there, and is read by everybody, including from the canna curious all the way up through the canna investors. So everybody in the industry reads it, as well as people who are just starting to learn about cannabis and the health aspects of the plant and all the great new products that are coming out, and from how to decorate your space and your bong cart to all the great things that are happening locally. So each of our markets, which include Colorado now, of course, where we started, California, Michigan, Massachusetts, Florida has just come back online in January, and we're just about to launch Oklahoma. In April, we're going to be launching Oklahoma with a great big party in Oklahoma City, which I wish I could.
Are you going?
I wish I could.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I was going to say, you guys are really known for your events as well. And I remember last year at MJ BizCon, the party was the Sensi Zodiac VIP party was the party to go to.
Yeah. We partner with Dave Tran and Fairchild Events. They do I think the best events in the cannabis industry. And we partner every year at MJ BizCon to do what is known as the e-ticket party for that Cannabis Week in Vegas. And yeah, that one was really special. It was great. Everybody wants to be going to those events. And then we also had our national Sensi Connect, which is our B2B event. We do a national one in Vegas every year. And that one we did at the top of the stratosphere last October. And it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And, going into that, what are some of the networking and events you guys put together?
Yeah, just kind of circling back to who we are. Like you said, Sensi is known for our events, and we're really focused on the community building. Every one of the publishers and all of our sales team, we're really about building community. And part of what we offer in our packages, for advertising, is really access to all of those events. And they include virtual events, because we do a Sensi Connects virtual networking event twice a month, every other week, in each of our markets. And that brings, anybody can join that platform and start connecting and networking with people all over the country. But in each market, we do a call, almost like a Zoom call, except we're using a different platform. And it's a great way to get your brand out there, to talk about, to meet other people in the industry who are doing something similar to you. We have a community set up in that platform, Sensi Connects platform, for every market. Plus we have specialty communities like retails and brands or tech. So it's a really good way for anybody in the industry to start networking. I think at some point it's going to be the biggest B2B network in the cannabis space.
It sounds well on its way. And
Yeah.
for our listeners, how can they find out about these events? What is the best website they should go to?
Yeah, they could go to connects.sensimag.com and create a profile for free and start joining those calls.
You hear that, everyone? Go check it out.
Connects.sensimag.com. That's the URL that you'd want to go to. And they can also, of course, reach out to me, and I'm on all the social platforms, as well as they can reach me with my email, which is a little harder to spell out. But it's nancy.birnbaum@sensimag.com. And my last name is spelled BIRNBAUM.
Yeah. And with all this connecting and community building you do, is there some points in your career where you're like, wow, we really did something amazing, or created a partnership that stands out in your mind, or connected the right people where it just was kind of kismet, magical?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's what I do. I'm known as the connector here in NorCal because, I'm all about helping companies grow their business. And so when I'm talking to any particular organization or company or brand, I'm always asking questions about how they're doing and what they're doing and what they've got coming up and how I can plug them into my network or what they might need. So it might be a cultivator that's looking to connect with somebody on a wholesale side and sell flower. It might be a manufacturer that's looking to connect with cultivators so that they can get flower for extracts or something. It could be a brand that's just starting out and needs to find a manufacturer, or has a new product that they're looking to do and they want a formulator or a marketing company to help them get the word out. I'm always making those kinds of connections for people, and so I really find that the ones that I've worked with closer, and maybe brought them into the Sensi fold and the Sensi family and offered them the opportunity to do branding in the magazine as well as show up at all of our events. They're the ones that I think really find the benefit through all of those. We call them multiple points of engagement, a lot of different ways for people to engage in the industry through us. So that my network kind of comes with that. And I'm always making those connections for people. And it could, I think I've helped a lot of different kinds of companies expand their business by making those introductions. There's so many that it would be hard to pick one or two and say, this is really the special one. When I bring on a new retailer into my network, I'm helping them figure out what brands they should have on the shelves. I have a really good contact list and network of great brands. And most recently, let's say it was a dispensary here in Santa Rosa, Jane Dispensary, and they're really focused to women. And so I wanted them to make sure that they were in touch with all the women-owned companies and brands that they could be supporting.
That's amazing. And so important. I mean, that's partly why we're doing this segment, Women in Cannabis, because in general, we were finding originally they weren't being so supported. You have a master's degree in social psychology and organizational development. Mm-hmm. And that has to factor into you being the great connector. Has it been so beneficial? Is that really what kind of propelled you into this space to be able to do? I mean, you're really impressive. The list of stuff you do is really, you do everything. You do mentoring, digital advertising, ad sales, blogging, branding, coaching, consulting, really all of it. It's just, it feels like your background has really set you up to really be in this space.
Yeah, it certainly has. And even though I didn't actually ever work in specifically in organizational development, working with big companies. Because when I graduated, it wasn't a time that companies were putting money into that. It happened later in Silicon Valley. But even though I didn't really ever work specifically in that space, it's always come in handy in looking at how organizations work and how companies are set up, and being able to help on all these different levels. But I think really it comes from how I was raised. I come from a family of my parents were very social and involved in politics, and I got involved in politics early on in Maryland and Baltimore, and so I think that's probably helped me the most in just being comfortable and talking to people about anything. And then I really invested a lot of time when I first got involved in the cannabis industry, which is when I helped launch Women's Cannabis Business Development here in Sonoma County, which was also called Women's CBD. And that was just a great way for me to start meeting people in the industry, bringing people together with events every month, and then learning about every segment. And it took a few years for me to really get a handle, be able to talk to people about production, about packaging, about cultivating, about compliance and policy and all of these things. I really enjoyed learning all of those things, and now I can put them to good use.
This industry, in particular, everybody wants in, but they don't realize everything involved. Yeah. And so I think if you're a newcomer, it takes a while to get assimilated, like you're saying. Yeah. And just out of curiosity, because you do know all sides of the industry, do you notice any current trends that are happening in the industry, like scaling back in one area, or do you see anything, big picture stuff?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty much spot on this year with my predictions from late last year.
Oh, I want to hear.
That this is the year for M&As. So we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the industry, particularly here in California, because it has been a struggle under the current policy around Prop 64, where it's been very hard for competition. It's been very hard for cultivation because, we're growing a lot in California. All up and down the state. But we don't have a lot of retail opportunities because so many municipalities have been able to opt out and not allow cannabis to be sold in their areas. And that makes for a real kind of bottleneck. Absolutely. There's not enough places to sell that flower, and more people are developing products, and expanding their product and their SKUs, which is good. But it's been a rough time over the last couple of years for sure. And then every specific municipality has their own challenges around permitting and what's allowed. So it's been a little hard, particularly here in NorCal. And so I see that people are positioning their companies as they're growing them for that possible merger and acquisition exit. And also, as you mentioned, it's been really hard for women owners to make ends meet. And so many of the ones that I started with Women's CBD have bootstrapped in, all this time. They've been managing to keep their companies going with a lot of amazing balancing acts. And really, I have to give credit to, companies like the Garden Society and Aaron Gore and Charlie, who just earned some of the biggest money, just got a $7 million investment so they can start expanding, not just here in California, but also around the country. And that has been really, really hard to get that investment money for women. And so there's people that are just doing such hard work right now, like Big Rock and Joyce Sinali at Big Rock, who's really been helping women with that investment piece. So it's just really good to see the right players and people supporting women in the industry. I'm also working with another group called Women. It was called Women Empowered in Cannabis, or WEIC. Now it's called Women Employed in Cannabis.
Oh, okay.
And, Kara Reed has started that, and with some other great women that we know. And now we're partnering with them with Sensi to start doing more events for women in the industry all over the country, not just here in California. But we're just getting ready to launch the first one, which is going to be like a potluck. So a really easy, a nice, fun event for women to come together here in the Bay Area. I think that's going to be here in Sonoma County in just a couple months. So we're really excited to be launching this all over the country in each of the Sensi markets, so that we can, again, just start bringing women together in a safe space that allows them to get all the information they need or ask the questions that they've been wanting to ask or felt uncomfortable asking in a room with men in the,
so necessary.
in the room.
And I actually really want to go to that event. I think it's going to be so beneficial to so many. And, our time is running out, which is so crazy, but do you have any parting advice for women looking to get into the industry?
I'd have to say that it really comes down to reaching out. The one thing I love about our industry, and maybe that's more so true in California than elsewhere, we're really about working together and not as competitive as other industries that I've seen. So reach out, join the groups that are on Facebook and other groups like WEIC. We have a group that you can join on Facebook, and start reaching out and asking for the things that you need so that you can start getting connected to various networks and get help.
Well, Nancy, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it. I would love to have you back at some time.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Chase. It's been great chatting with you.
If you missed any of this great interview with Nancy Birnbaum, you can go to W420radionetwork.com and click on the archive section to listen to this and other great interviews. And we'll be right back.
When winter comes or the clouds or night comes, indoor farms turn to artificial light to make their crops grow. Let's say hello to an expert, Joe Sullivan from Franklin Energy. He is the Indoor Agricultural Program Manager. Everybody knows that indoor grow is more challenging, and then again, it can be more advantageous because you can control the ecosystem and your environment.
A word for indoor ag or indoor growing would also be controlled environment agriculture. And, that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to control and provide the best possible environment. Far and away, LED is the best source to provide light for plants to grow. They're more energy efficient. They use less wattage, and they provide the same amount, if not better light than high pressure sodium, metal halide, and other traditional light sources. They're more of a broad spectrum light source, so they're providing light within the photosynthetic active radiation wavelengths really more broadly than your traditional light sources. They last longer, and they're traditionally more reliable than high pressure sodium, metal halide, and those types of light sources.
I understand it can reduce grow time up to 30%. They can last up to 50,000 hours. They are more durable than fluorescents, and they emit less heat. It's like a no-brainer. And I understand that Franklin Energy is giving consumers an opportunity to capitalize on LEDs if they want to upgrade their lighting system. So tell us what's going on.
Franklin Energy runs and implements rebate programs for utilities all across the country.
If I have an indoor grow and I want to make a transition to LEDs and I want to get that Franklin Energy rebate, tell us what we've got to do.
You can contact the Excel Indoor Ag program at excelenergy.com. That's XCEL energy.com. And then from there, you navigate up top to business customers and then select rebates from the drop down. And finally, you can select business lighting from there. My email address is jsullivan@franklinenergy.com. Telephone number is 720-822-3719. One of our amazing cultivation energy advisors will help you get started along your journey to be more efficient.
Joe Sullivan from Franklin Energy, the Indoor Agricultural Program Manager. Thanks so much, Joe. This is Rich Walkoff on America's Cannabis Conversation.
Welcome to America's Cannabis Conversation. I'm your host, David Katzmeyer, and today we're going to be talking about Unitech Laboratories. This is a company that does cannabis, hemp, and CBD oil testing for growers and various members of the cannabis industry. Testing is essential to comply with government regulations and to ensure quality control. Without this testing, the chain of going from seed to sell would not work because we have to be compliant. We have to have regulations met. And this is what's giving us our quality cannabis and all byproducts. So to learn a little bit about this, we reached out to A Better World Media and Promotions at A Better World. That's where Mitchell Rabin hosts A Better World Radio and TV and various other forms of media. He also happens to be on the advisory board of Unitech Labs. And so consequently, he has invited top executives of Unitech Laboratories, CEO Stephen Taylor and Chairman Gary Smith. So Mitchell, welcome to the program. Stephen Taylor, Gary Smith, welcome to the program. And Mitchell, tell us please a little bit about Unitech Laboratories.
Okay, David, thanks so much for having us on the show. We really appreciate being here. I like to say that the lab business in the cannabis space is like the sleeping giant. It's behind everything, but it's not so visible. And as a result, it's actually a giant kind of business. So we really like to kind of pride ourselves on being big, but a little invisible. It's kind of fun. On that note, I do have a couple of giants to join us here today. Stephen Taylor is really the initial brains behind this operation. Stephen has been in the space for decades. He's an attorney since 1981. He's focused on cannabis law and procedural compliance issues since 2005. In 2017, following the legalization of recreational cannabis, founded SCMC Professionals in one of the first testing labs in California. He sold off his interest in Convergence and began Unitech Labs in 2019, and the initial focus was on Michigan, Illinois, with Florida and New York closely behind. Virginia is coming on board, I understand, as recently as today. This is good news as we watch the world change. Also, we have with us Gary Smith, chairman of the board of Unitech Labs. Gary has an MBA from San Francisco State University. He's been in practice as a tax accountant since 1988 and a financial advisor since 1993. Gary, in his professional capacity, guides the company forward in its own compliance with the rules and regulations. So this company is on its way to tremendous, tremendous success. On that note, I'd really love to turn to Steve Taylor and ask him to speak a little bit about the direction of the company and what you also see, Steve, as the direction of the industry.
All right, thank you for that introduction. I never really thought of myself as a giant in the industry, but I think I'm going to add that to my bio. You're much
taller than I am, I'll tell you that.
I don't think so, but anyway, thanks for the compliment. I'm going to add that onto my bio. The company itself, where we are right now, like as you indicated, we started up in 2019, and we were going great guns. The pandemic hurt us. But we're coming back around and getting a great deal more interest right now. Unfortunately, the pandemic hurt a lot of startups in the cannabis industry, whether it's labs and or oil manufacturers, cultivators, whatever. But it seems like the industry is poised to come back on strongly now. There's an obvious increasing demand for the product throughout the country right now. And we're seeing a high number of states going towards recreational, as well as possible legislation going through Congress right now, introduced by a Republican of all things, to make recreational legal throughout the country. And of course, testing labs, we guarantee the safety of the product. Every state is basically introducing or mandating safety testing of all the products, which surprisingly enough was never required when it was being promoted for medicinal purposes, which is kind of astounding that safety compliance testing was not required for something that was being promoted to have medicinal uses. But that has changed now. So where we are, the testing basically, if you remember, there have been a few outbreaks of people acquiring lung infections or problems from vape cartridges that had not been tested, and that was because they either had vitamin E acetate or camdium or other pesticides contained within. We test for 67 pesticides, 8 heavy metals, microbial infections, water content, THC, CBD percentages, terpenes, and other matters. Basically, it's about 110 things that we test for. And then we approve it for consumption by the public. And where I see the industry growing right now, well, in New York, I think just this last week, they put a bill on the governor's desk to kind of kick into gear the legalization back there. I mean, I know people can possess up to 3 ounces in New York without repercussion, but I believe it's been very slow getting dispensaries off the ground there, for recreational at least. And in terms of getting testing labs off the ground, prior to this year, the only testing labs you really found in New York were those that had been licensed and authorized by the DEA, which, mind you, was a bit tight-fisted. They only authorized 2, and they were purely for academic research. So I see the industry growing quickly. There are no big players in the laboratory testing industry right now, nobody with national reach. I hope for us to be one of the first, and adding on to Illinois and Michigan, New York, Virginia, and Florida. Part of our corporate policy is early entry into the market and obtaining significant market share. We are, generally speaking, the Marijuana Business Journal, which is the cannabis version of the Wall Street Journal, in a study coming out, I think a little over a year ago, indicated that testing labs were profitable 95% of the time, which gives us the highest profitability ratio of any sector in the industry right now. So after that introduction, let's hit a few more particulars. You guys got any questions you want me to?
Sure. Well, I'd like to, Dave, with your permission, bring Gary Smith in. He's been involved in this company also for some time and has his own purview into its potential success here. Gary, would you please chime in on what you see as the future of the company and what you'd like to see it do in terms of its own growth?
Sure. Thank you, Mitchell, and thank you, David. I met a gentleman a couple years ago who summed up the marijuana industry in 9 words. Someone grows it, someone sells it, someone smokes it. I thought that was very humorous.
Good one.
However, there's 4 words. Someone tests it.
Yes.
Someone tests it. And
he
again,
was short 3 words, that brilliant fellow.
Yeah. And so now, we find it very kind of curious, ironic, and even amusing that marijuana would be legal for medicinal purposes but require no testing. But when it became for recreational use, the states required testing. Now,
Go figure.
This sort of leads up to the fact that I find the industry in a very, very clumsy state of being. Think of the 19-teens and the 1920s when all the bootleggers were being made illegal in the hills of Appalachia, and as the big conglomerates took over, the whiskey and the bourbon industry. A lot of beautiful small businesses are being forced out. Big players are coming in. There's heavy taxation. It's a very complicated and difficult scene for a lot of people. But the states that have legalized marijuana have made it very, very clear that testing now is important, and it needs to be highly professional, not vertically integrated, where a grower can have his own product tested by his own company. It must be by an independent lab, and it requires somebody, a company that actually understands the people in the business. And so Steve and I, having been around this industry for a long time, understand that a lot of the people in the business are sort of unusual characters.
Good description, Gary.
Really.
Yeah.
Leftovers from the '60s.
It's gone from an outlaw industry to a generally commercially acceptable industry in the last 10 years.
Good.
And of course, a lot of the outlaws aren't around. So.
Yeah, and so what happens, what's really fascinating now is you're getting very big money coming in the business. People coming in with $10 and $20 million. And you have three parties involved. You have some wealthy funder coming from an entirely different industry who hires a professional business person to manage the operation, and that person hires a former outlaw or pirate who's a cannabis junkie who really knows and has been growing for 20 or 30, has been growing for 20 years. So you have three different players involved in the industry. And the great thing about the cannabis industry is that we found that the growers themselves, the guys and gals who are in charge of the grow operations, are really good people, not competitive, happy to share information, and just a delightful group to work with. And
that they are.
Was experience in Michigan when we met many people there. So it's really a fascinating time, but it's still a clumsy time because government legislation and even the federal tax laws are still very strange in the cannabis industry, as any of the professionals out there know. The good thing about the cannabis business for laboratories is laboratories are not burdened with the Section 205 exclusion of operating expenses, which, as you all know, is a very crippling thing for the industry at this time, and we hope to see will change in the near future.
Well, it makes our sector far more profitable too. And let me interject something here and follow up to a couple of the issues that Gary raised. His analogy back to the days of Prohibition is fairly accurate. When Prohibition ended in 33? I think you started out. It was right after Roosevelt took office, literally within 3 months.
33.
Yeah, 33. So, you started out right in that beginning. I mean, there was something like 2,500 licenses given out for brewers, whiskey or brewers or whatever. And that quickly, within 5 years, dwindled down to somewhere in the 200 to 300 range. There was a consolidation. The big boys came into play. And we're seeing that same thing in the cannabis industry, being driven primarily by high taxes and, high fees. And that's, initially when California at least, legalized it, they really made an effort to sustain the mom and pop growers, the people who were basically, just in it to take care of their families. Maybe they grossed netted out 100 to 200,000 a year. But all of them have basically been forced out of the business. We've already seen that consolidation happening in California. And now, we're really kind of fighting against that. One of the nice things in the laboratory business is you don't really have any big players. And we could conceivably be one of the big five throughout the country. But one of the reasons for this, and this is a problem with, whenever you mix politics into the law, which is almost inevitable, what usually results is something similar to what Dr. Frankenstein would put together. It isn't pretty, and it is clumsy. And part of the issue with that is that when state legislatures pass these laws, they sell it to the voters or they sell it to, the opposing party that, hey, think of how much money we're going to make on taxing this. And so what you have is a very high tax rate, an effective tax rate and fee rate that's about 45% in California. And what it does is it's a breeding ground for black market growers, because as the profit margin drops, I've had a lot of clients who were licensed growers who basically on the side have said, I can't make any money over here anymore, so I'm going to do black market because, 50% of the money I make does not have to go to pay fees and whatever. And
low taxes.
How,
low
yeah,
to know.
And,
low to know.
And,
Steve, in our last few minutes here, I want to steer the conversation to something that you kind of been harping on a little bit subtly, which is the quality of the testing and lab testing business and the incredibly important position it plays in the overall industry. And I know you are now building the company again post-COVID, so to speak, and you are looking for investors, you're looking for people in various legal states to come forward and play. Could you just speak a little bit about that and what you're looking for, and so people listening could tune in and see if they want to play with us?
All right. Well, you start out, first of all, testing is going to be mandatory. We are an absolute, unavoidable chain or link in the chain of commerce. Our business is built in. We're licensed by fed, state, and local communities. Our profit margins, as I referenced earlier in the Marijuana Business Journal study, we're profitable 95% of the time. The rate of return is fantastic. Over 4 years, about 300%.
Gary Smith, I would love to have you weigh in for the last couple of moments here.
Yeah, I want to say very quickly that for me personally, what I'm most excited about in the cannabis industry is I think there'll be incredible achievements in medicine that's coming through cannabis. We're going to see even more breakthroughs with treatments on cancer, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. I think we're going to see a massive breakthrough in the next 10 years.
Epilepsy.
I agree with that. I think it's absolutely true.
And I want to be part of that, and testing is essential for that. So, yeah, we encourage people to contact us.
Unitech Laboratories.
It's beautiful. Gary, I so appreciate the point you're making about the expanded role of the use of medical marijuana in the world of medicine. Endocannabinoid system, it has been discovered we have. It's like we have our own cannabis-based nervous system. That's how extraordinary that plant is relative to human physiology. So I totally commend the work that both of you are doing in this space. It's really helping to advance civilization. That's how I feel about it.
The industry in this particular sector are poised for a tremendous amount of growth, both through, the expanded application for medical purposes, as well as guaranteeing the safety of product use for the recreational user. Right now, if you had a look at it, I would consider it to be something like Facebook or Google in their first year of operation in terms of the growth potential and the profit potential.
Oh, that is quite an analogy.
Growing.
Steve, from your mouth.
I kind of like that one.
Exactly. Dave Katzmeyer, I'd love to just turn it back over to you and for your final comments here.
Well, Stephen Taylor, CEO, and Gary Smith, Chairman of Unitech Laboratories. I was fascinated by going through your site. A lot of people don't think about how important this link has grown. That testing has become a major aspect of the industry in itself and an indispensable link in the chain. And going through your website at unitechlaboratories.com, it's amazing at all the different services that you provide and that testing can do. And you have them all detailed there beautifully. This is a place where a lot of growers and other people turn because they need the testing, an essential link in a growing field, expanding as fast as any field since computer industry from the mid-'80s to today, and it's going to grow further. Gentlemen, you are part of a company that's a leader and growing in the forefront this expanding industry. Thank you both for being here, and we thank Mitchell Rabin of ABetterWorld.net, who is our link to this important and vital link to the cannabis industry. Gentlemen, I thank you all for being here today on America's Cannabis Conversation. And I'll conclude by saying you can hear this and other interviews in our archive at W420radionetwork.com.
W420radionetwork.com.